Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, troops from the 82nd Airborne Division head into battle for victory on America's Got Talent. Hear from members of a singing group who faced down Simon Cowell. And the Marine Commandant heads into retirement. Find out what lies in the wake of the departure of a sometimes divisive leader. Also, cluster munitions are on the way from the US to Ukraine. We have a primer on these weapons and what makes them so controversial. We've got those stories and more lined up for you this week, so don't go away. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Colin Demarest. Soldiers in the 82nd Airborne are trained to quell their fears when facing an enemy, but the intensity of staring down Simon Cowell isn't something covered in the manual. But that's just what a group of airborne troops did this week on one of the biggest and longest running talent shows in the country, America's Got Talent. Members of the group talked to reporter Simon Perez recently about the experience and what it felt like to get 4 yeses and move on in the competition.
Attention!
Airborne!
No left, left, right, go left. Course, attention!
Airborne!
Forward, launch! There. There.
Oh, wow.
What time? Launch! There. Course. Halt!
So take me through the, how the light bulb moment where you all are maybe just sitting around like, oh yeah, maybe we should audition for America's Got Talent and see if we can make it,
This was actually put together by our commander. We had just finished a large TDY where we did the, what is it called?
The Today Show.
The Today Show in New York City. And we got back and we were just going over how everything went with the trip. And he pulls out this piece of paper and he says, look, we have this opportunity that may or may not present itself. And we just wanted to know who would be interested in doing something like this. And we were all just like, okay, well, what is it? Is it going to be another show or, are we traveling somewhere else? And he said, no, it's America's Got Talent. They want us to audition. And we said, absolutely, we're not going to turn this down. So I think everybody was super excited to just be put up on this platform. And we didn't know what would come from it. And we still don't know what's going to come from it. But we're just super blessed to have the opportunity.
So what's it like auditioning as an act? Like, I imagine it's pretty intense, pretty nerve-wracking, or are you guys just, such pros? It's like, whatever, just another big audience.
Absolutely not. I mean, I was pretty nervous, but I was also excited. I think for myself personally, I went through a roller coaster of emotion during that time that we were going through this process, but having my battle buddies helped me out because Gilbert, he's pretty nonchalant and he'll help us through processing those emotions. And Rodon's just go with the flow. It is what it is at this point, but I overthink everything. So I think it was more exciting of an adrenaline rush to know that we're doing all of this, all the training is going to pay off, all the rehearsal time is going to pay off, and we're going to be able to audition and see where it takes us from here. It an adrenaline rush, to say the shortest answer.
And
Yeah.
super cool to be surrounded by all
Oh,
the
yeah.
other talented acts. Like there's so many talented acts, so many talented people out there. So like to be in that sphere, and sort of get to mix with those other people who are doing something at a very high level in their field, it kind of drives you forward. You want to do the best you can, and represent yourself the best you can, and obviously represent ourselves, the division and the Army.
Center, haste! Hold up.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
My Girl, it defines who the course is. It defines, just the talent, and it shows our musical ability all around, from the soloists all the way to the chorus that's in the back.
Here we go, all the way, gotta be rough and tough, airborne, every day, we run to the sun, airborne, all the way.
I got sunshine on a cloudy day, and when it's cold outside, I got the month of May.
Take me through that that moment after you're done performing on stage in front of, thousands of people, and you guys make it. What was that like? What was that feeling like for you all?
I was just hoping for positive results, just making sure we had those. I really didn't care what was said afterwards, but being up there with the rest of my team, and everybody supporting each other, and just making sure that we made it through after such a rough weekend. It was a really just uplifting moment. I think all of us were on cloud nine.
Great. We're going to vote. Howie.
Yes.
Yes, for me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's 4 yeses.
Bye, LA.
Liv, he's got a great personality, that guy as well.
4 yeses. Here we go. You're here to win, right? All right, let's go.
Airborne! All the way! Airborne! All the way!
Thanks, Simone. For those who prefer to get their news in audio only, Simone also produces Military Times' Early Bird Brief. Check out his work there, wherever you get your podcasts. Stick around, and when we come back, I'll look at a controversial munition the US is sending to Ukraine: cluster bombs. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Colin Demarest. Cluster munitions are a controversial piece of the arsenal for major militaries around the globe. Outlawed by many countries, they're banned at an international level due to their tendency to leave unexploded ordnance scattered on a battlefield, which often has tragic consequences later for everyday citizens. One of the few countries to keep cluster bombs, the United States, is due to start sending them to Ukraine for use against Russian forces. For an explainer on that transfer and the nature of the bombs, we turn to Defense News' Daniel Wolflook.
Earlier this month, the United States promised to send cluster munitions to Ukraine for the embattled country to use against Russia. That's part of an $800 million aid package that includes armored vehicles as well as munitions for several systems, including Patriot air defense, HIMARS, and badly needed 155mm artillery rounds.
By providing Ukraine with DPICM artillery ammunition, we will ensure that the Ukrainian military has sufficient artillery ammunition for many months to come. In this period, the United States, our allies and partners, will continue to ramp up our defense industrial bases to support Ukraine.
What DPICMs bring to a battlefield is anti-armor and anti-personnel capability. So essentially, it can be either loaded with shape charges, which are armor penetrating, or they can be loaded with fragmentary munitions, which are anti-personnel. So clearly a capability that would be useful in any type of offensive operations.
Instead of hitting individual people or vehicles, these bombs cover a wide swath of land. The advantage comes when the bomblets explode, and the major risk comes when the bomblets don't explode. The fear is that those munitions that don't explode will function like landmines and cause risk for people for decades to come. Some systems have been used in the past that have a dud rate of more than 40%. That's according to the International Committee of the Red Cross. The Pentagon hasn't said how much of this ammunition will be sent, but it did say that they will have a dud rate of less than 2.35%.
I will say that we have multiple variants of DPICMs in our stocks, and the ones that we are considering providing would not include older variants with dud rates that are higher than 2.35%. We are aware of reports out there from several decades ago that indicate that certain 155 millimeter DPICMs have higher dud rates, so we would be carefully selecting rounds with lower dud rates for which we have recent testing data.
In accepting the munitions, Ukraine has decided the benefits outweigh the risk. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan explained the risk analysis the White House took into consideration.
We have been looking at this for quite some time, and what we have been weighing is this basic question of civilian harm. The challenge of cluster munitions, as you know, is that even at low dud rates, there are some unexploded ordnance that is left, and that could potentially pose a risk to civilians down the road. So we did not immediately come out of the gate and provide this. But we had to balance that against the risk to civilian harm if Ukraine did not have sufficient artillery.
This decision has been met with opposition. The United Nations asked that the use of munitions should, quote unquote, stop immediately. And several countries who are part of the Convention on Cluster Munitions have opposed the White House's move. And those include Spain, Canada, the United Kingdom, China, and Germany. The Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen has warned against using them, and he added that the munitions have maimed or killed people in his country for more than 5 decades, and that the real victims will be Ukrainian civilians. Interestingly enough, Cambodia is not a member of the convention. And another country opposing their use is, you guessed it, Russia. They called it an act of desperation despite using the munitions themselves.
I would note that the Russians have already been employing cluster munitions on the battlefield, many with which include a very high dud rate, reportedly.
Cluster munitions are already used in the war in Ukraine by both sides. The difference is that Russia is using cluster munition to attack, to invade Ukraine. Ukraine is using cluster munition to protect itself against an aggressor.
The U.S. is sending these munitions for another reason beyond strategy, and it's logistics. The administration has been sending 155 millimeter rounds to Ukraine as long as it's been giving aid.
We are reaching a point in this conflict because of the dramatically high expenditure rates of artillery by Ukraine and by Russia, where we need to build a bridge from where we are today to when we have enough monthly production of unitary rounds, that unitary rounds alone will suffice to give Ukraine what it needs. So as a result, this is the moment to begin the construction of that bridge so that there isn't any period over this summer or heading into this fall when Ukraine is short on artillery, and being short on artillery, it is vulnerable to Russian counterattacks that could subjugate more Ukrainian civilians.
The American munitions have a failure rate of less than 2.35%. We're not exactly sure how many rounds are being sent over, but one thing is for certain. These will still pose a risk for people in the future. Included in the agreement to use these are mitigation efforts to reduce the risk of harm to civilians for years to come.
Ukraine has provided written assurances that it is going to use these in a very careful way that is aimed at minimizing any risk to civilians. And by the way, Ukraine, the democratically elected government of Ukraine, has every incentive to minimize risk to civilians because it's their citizens.
The Ukrainian government has offered us assurances in writing on the responsible use of DPICMs, including that they will not use the rounds in civilian-populated urban environments, and that they will record where they use these rounds, which will simplify later demining efforts. Ukraine also has committed to post-conflict demining efforts to mitigate any potential harm to civilians. The United States has already invested more than $95 million in Ukraine's demining activities, and we will provide more support to help Ukraine mitigate the impacts of cluster munition use by both sides in this conflict.
So now, we'll have to wait and see if or how much these munitions help Ukraine. For Defense News Weekly, I'm Daniel Woolfolk.
Coming up next, our personal finance expert walks you through the links between protecting your identity and protecting your money. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack talks about protecting your finances by protecting your identity.
Banking online makes managing your finances and life much easier and more convenient. Just tap and you're in. But make sure that your passwords, account, and personal info are for your eyes only, because fraudsters are online looking for ways to tap into your account too. Always guard your personal information and practice online banking safety tips. Use strong passwords and vary them from account to account. The strongest passwords have upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters. And you may think it's a hassle, but change those passwords often. It can make it even harder for hackers to get into your personal info. Next, keep your software updated. Outdated software may not be enough over time, making it easier for viruses and malware to infiltrate your system. And here's something you may not think about, but it's always best to type your bank's web address in your browser yourself. Don't click links in an email or text, and never send your personal info that way either. Your bank or credit union wouldn't email or text asking for your personal information, ever. So don't do it. If you follow these tips, you're adding extra layers of protection to your accounts and keeping your money and info right where it belongs, with you.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, pop your head out of that turret and check out Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com, as well as DefenseNews.com. And the place I publish every day, C4ISRnet.com. And to be the sharpest guardian patrolling the stars, sign up for our Early Bird Brief newsletter, compiled each morning to bring you the latest headlines. It's also in audio. Check out the podcast version out each weekday wherever you get your podcasts. And if social media is where you get your news, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. In high-level developments at the Marine Corps, the force last week saw the departure of now former Commandant General David Berger, who retired after a 4-year turn in the top chair in the Corps. Berger has been a driving force and central figure in much of the large-scale overhaul plan for the Marines, a process known as Force Design 2030, which proposes major shifts for units large and small. With more on what Berger's departure means for the force and his as-yet unconfirmed successor, we turn to reporter Megan Eckstein for the story.
This has been the honor of my life, the privilege of my life, for me and Donna to serve all Marines, all families, all sailors everywhere. Semper Fidelis.
General David Berger just wrapped up 4 years as Commandant of the Marine Corps, leading the service in what was a very consequential time for the Marine Corps. He began to think through a generational change for the service that would prepare them for peer-on-peer conflict, which is something the Marine Corps hadn't thought about in the past 2 decades as they were preoccupied with ground wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Force Design 2030, as this effort was known, is really looking at modernizing the Marine Corps, bringing in new technologies, new sensors, new weapons, but it also had several follow-on efforts looking at modernizing the personnel side through Talent Management 2030, as well as the infrastructure side through Installations and Logistics 2030. So really, General Berger was looking to modernize the entire service and prepare it for a new era of conflict. Even as he was trying to undertake these changes, he also had a lot of unexpected challenges to deal with during his 4 years as Commandant, including the COVID-19 pandemic, which really entered the discussion about 6 months into his time leading the service, as well as the war in Ukraine and the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So even as he was making these big generational changes to the service, there were a lot of current events that really preoccupied his time.
General Dave Berger has led this historic and transformational effort. He's done so with vision and creativity and boldness. He's not just willing to embrace change, he's eager to lead change.
Folks typically think about General Berger as being a very thoughtful leader. He is most comfortable when he's in listening mode, really wants to hear both from high-level leaders in the US and in allied and partnered militaries, as well as the low-level Marine, really gathering as much information as he can in sort of this listening and thinking mode before coming to any decisions. He's been very data-driven throughout the Force Design 2030 process and has had a very iterative approach of listening, thinking about ideas, wargaming them out, experimenting with them, and then implementing changes. Despite this reputation for being very thoughtful and very open to listening to anyone with a good idea, he has received his fair share of pushback to Force Design 2030. And his perspective has been that he's willing to listen to the debate, he's willing to engage in the debate, but at the end of the day, the data proves out a good path forward, and he hasn't backed down from his idea of where Force Design ought to go, even despite the criticism from a significant number of retired generals.
3 years ago, I appeared before you and described how rapid change, was required to meet our statutory missions in the Marine Corps and the mandates of the National Defense Strategy. And with the bipartisan help of the members of this committee and my civilian leadership in the Pentagon, I'm here to tell you this morning that Force Design is not a future aim point, it is a reality today.
General Berger stepped down as Commandant on July 10th. During the ceremony at Marine Barracks, Washington, he handed the official battle colors to General Eric Smith, who is currently serving as the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. However, despite all the pomp and circumstance of the ceremony, General Smith is not officially the Commandant. He is performing the duties of the Commandant while also remaining the Assistant Commandant. And this is due to the Senate's inability to vote on a number of military officials who are being promoted and moving on to other jobs. So during this time period, General Smith will be essentially performing the role of the number 1 and the number 2 Marine leaders. His schedule is going to be very busy. He has all the authorities to do whatever is needed to keep the Marine Corps on track. But it really just comes down to the fact that there's not a permanent head of the Marine Corps in place. And a lot of folks are wondering, what message does that send to friends and allies? What message does that send to potential adversaries? And so multiple speakers at the ceremony, including outgoing Commandant General Berger, really urged the Senate to do their job and put General Smith in as the official Senate-confirmed Commandant of the Marine Corps.
The Marine Corps is in fantastic hands, and I'm with you, Mr. Secretary. We need the Senate to do their job so that we can have a sitting commandant that's appointed and confirmed. We need that House to be occupied. We ask the Senate to do that.
Though General Berger is stepping down after 4 years of developing and implementing Force Design 2030, there's not a chance that this effort isn't going to move forward. General Smith has been very clear that he not only likes Force Design and the direction that it's going in, but that he wants to accelerate it. He's told the Senate Armed Services Committee during his confirmation hearing that he wanted to continue with Force Design and, if the money were available, accelerate it.
Force Design 2030 is in a good place. Whether the year is 27, 26, 25, for the Marines, we are the fight tonight force. We want to be even more ready than we are every single day. That's our mission when we wake up. So Force Design is on track. We need to accelerate those areas where we can, and that'll come with the steady funding and the continued experimentation and quick feedback that we get from our extremely excellent Marine Corps Warfighting Lab.
And he actually told me, following the change of command ceremony, that he was interested in looking at things like long-range fires that he can accelerate immediately, even as he's serving as acting commandant of the Marine Corps. So he really, wants to put his foot to the gas pedal and is not willing to back down on Force Design because he so firmly believes that it's the right direction for the Marine Corps.
As far as budgetary, experimentation, changing formations, I can still do all that. And those things that are working well for us,
long-range fires, etc., we will move faster on them as long as we have a defense budget.
Okay, so you don't need to wait to go fast. You can start doing that right now.
I do not need to wait.
So even though there's a new face leading the Marine Corps, we shouldn't expect to see any big changes, and the Marine Corps will continue in the direction it's been under the past 4 years of General Berger's leadership.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. For more coverage, head over to militarytimes and defensenews.com, and don't forget about C4ISRnet as well. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.